Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The South Carolina commitment sweatshirt had to come on for this one. This is huge. Coming out of the transfer portal, former Georgia Southern defensive lineman Troy Pikes committing to South Carolina. Now, look, this commitment might fly under the radar to the national media. Probably will fly under the radar to the national media. Heck, this commitment might fly under the radar to some South Carolina fans as well. But I think to the South Carolina fans that follow this program pretty damn closely, and have those nitty gritty conversations about where this depth chart sits, I think a lot of South Carolina fans know how big this one is. I mean, we talked extensively about the question marks about the depth in the middle of that defensive line. Like, hey, is South Carolina deep enough along the middle of that defensive line to make a run in the SEC? That's a legitimate question and a legitimate concern for a lot of South Carolina fans, including myself. Troy Pikes goes such a long way in kind of answering or at least mitigating some of those concerns. Now, you look at Troy Pikes, the recruiting ranking out of the portal, not necessarily the highest ranked guy. We talk about this all the time when it comes to recruiting, whether it's at the high school ranks or the transfer portal ranks. Add context to it. And one of the things that stands out to me is, all right, who are the other programs that South Carolina was competing against to land the services of Troy Pikes? The top two programs were Georgia and Ohio State. Like that should tell South Carolina fans all they need to know about the potential value that Troy Pikes can bring to South Carolina in the middle of the defensive line. Look, Ohio State and Georgia, they ain't trying to get scrubs in the transfer portal. This one was big. And one of the things that stands out to me immediately, and I promise we'll get into Troy Pikes and talk about like what he brings, the success that South Carolina had in terms of developing defensive linemen, putting guys out to the NFL draft, TJ Sanders, Kyle Kennard, Tonka Hemingway, like that type of stuff, I think allows South Carolina to pitch the program a little bit differently than maybe they were able to 5 years ago. Hey, look at the success we are having developing line of scrimmage players and the amount of success we are having putting guys out to the NFL draft. For guys like Troy Pikes, that's what they want to see. Like, yes, NIL clearly matters, but a lot of these guys are looking for a program that, hey, where can I go to give myself the best chance, to go to the NFL? And I think South Carolina, with the player development success they have had, I think it puts them in a better spot to start winning these kind of recruitments against programs like Georgia, against programs like Ohio State. You look at Troy Pikes, the first thing that excites me the most about him is he's only going to be a redshirt sophomore. Like he's only going into year 3, and you saw a massive step in the right direction from his true freshman year to his redshirt freshman year. He only played 8 snaps as a freshman at Georgia Southern. In 2024, 300 snaps. And although the box score, you can't box score scout this guy. Like you look at the numbers. I think he had 1 tackle for loss and a half a sack. Like it's not necessarily like he's lighting up the box score. You turn on the film and you understand why teams like Georgia and Ohio State were going after this kid. Really disruptive. Like 12% pass rush win rate, consistently getting behind the line of scrimmage. Look, I'm not going to say he's going to be TJ Sanders. He does kind of remind you of TJ Sanders, though. Like a little bit of an undersized interior defensive lineman, probably around 290, maybe 295, and maybe gets up to 300 pounds. Again, this is a young kid that's probably still putting on some weight. Really quick off the line of scrimmage, really good first step, like kind of won in the same ways that TJ Sanders won for South Carolina, and really fits what South Carolina wants to do. Like what is the strategy for South Carolina up front? We want to penetrate, we want to create negative plays. Like you look at why South Carolina was so dominant on the defensive side of the football in 2024, sacks, tackles for loss, getting teams behind the chains, ferocious pass rush. Like that's the kind of player I think Troy Pikes can be. He's not this 320-pound nose tackle that's going to two gap. He's going to penetrate. And that's what South Carolina wants as well. I think Troy Pikes has a chance at maybe starting, but I don't think that matters. Like, I think what matters is you're getting a guy that can come in and give you a quality 20 to 30 snaps a game. And that's really what South Carolina was trying to do. Like, we got to get this rotation deep enough to withstand the SEC play. And I think Troy Pikes goes a long way in doing that. Going to get a little bit more into Troy Pikes talk about where South Carolina might be going in the portal. Now, before we get into it, as always, excuse me, to the South Carolina fans, just want to say thank you to you guys. Y'all know how much fun I've had talking about this team in spring practice, talking about this team in the spring portal. The amount of support y'all have shown the fellas has been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Where I want to start here is just, hey, let's give Shane Beamer a golf clap here. Like, I think there were a lot of South Carolina fans that were getting a little antsy in terms of, hey, we got needs that we need to address in the portal, and we haven't really addressed them yet. And I'll raise my hand and say I was getting a little antsy too. Like, this was a big time concern for myself, and I think a lot of other South Carolina fans. Like, do we have enough guys we trust in the middle of this defensive line? And it kind of was a slower start to the spring portal process. And Shane Beamer, very similar to how he managed the winter portal, was, hey, we're gonna wait, we're gonna be patient, we're gonna let the market develop, and then we're gonna find a guy we like, and then we're gonna go compete with a team like Georgia and compete for a team with a team like Ohio State to go land a guy that is crucial to our success in the 2025 season. And I think Troy Pikes was that guy. You get him on campus, and I think they didn't even let him leave. Like, hey, commit on campus. We need you, big dog. South Carolina gets it done. This is what the spring portal's for. You don't build your roster in the spring portal. You make sure you fill in the cracks. Like, hey, where are the positions that coming out of spring are a little bit of a concern for us? Defensive line, specifically in the middle, was certainly a concern in South Carolina. Went out, got it done. Now you look at the depth chart, you look at the rotation for South Carolina in the middle of the defensive line and say, hey, we're starting to feel better about it. Like, is South Carolina going to have the dominant interior defensive line that they had in the 2024 year with guys like Tonka and TJ Sanders? No, probably not. But you have other players at other positions that can be those dominant forces, like guys like Dylan Stewart. But it's good enough. Like, now you suddenly think, hey, it's not going to be as much of a liability as we were concerned it once was going to be. Gabriel Brown-Ludindy, like, first healthy spring practice, sounds like he might be emerging as that five-star talent we knew he was at Texas A&M. It sounds like Monkel Goodwin, a guy that's been a solid rotational piece for South Carolina at times, sounded like he had his best spring practice at South Carolina. Nick Barrett, you kind of know what you're going to get. Troy Pikes coming in. Xavier Hardy, Devontae Miles, like that. Now you feel more comfortable having guys like Xavier Hardy and Devontae Miles in the 3 deep. Guys that might just play 10, maybe 15 snaps a game. I don't think a lot of South Carolina fans had a ton of confidence with Devontae Miles having to play 20 to 30 snaps a game. With the addition of Troy Pikes, you put less pressure on a guy like Devontae Miles or Xavier Hardy. And I think Xavier Hardy is going to be a really good football player. I just am not sure if it's going to be immediately year one in the SEC. I think you put your spot, you put yourself in a better spot to have the depth you need to win in the SEC. And the last thing I'll note with Troy Pikes is he's one of those transfer portal additions that's just getting better. There's a lot of additions you can make in the portal that, like Damon Clowney. How much better is Damon Clowney going to be in 2025 than he was in 2024 at Charlotte? Probably not significantly better, right? Troy, and you knew that bringing him in. Like, hey, we just need a guy that can give us a solid 20, 30 snaps a game. And I think that's what Damon Clowney can be. Troy Pikes, on the other hand, he's only going into year 3. He's clearly getting better as a football player. So, at the jump, I think you're getting a solid rotational piece on the defensive line. Could really emerge as a difference maker for South Carolina, like whether that's in 2025 or whether that's in 2026 or even 2027. He's got 3 years of eligibility left. We'll see how it plays out, but there's a lot to like for a couple of different reasons here with Troy Pikes. And now the next interesting conversation is, hey, as the spring portal begins to wind down, are there any other positions that are jumping off for South Carolina? One of the things that I noted is linebacker was a little bit of a concern for us, like at least how we talked about it going into spring. South Carolina's been radio silent in terms of trying to find linebackers. And look, we know Shane Beamer's not afraid to use the portal. Like, when there is a position that's out of a concern, we will try to address it. South Carolina didn't try to go after any linebackers, at least to my knowledge. Like, what does that tell me about Shane Beamer's confidence about this linebacker room? Probably pretty damn high. Fred Johnson, Jaron Willis, Justin O'Shawn Murphy. Like, we know the athletic profiles are there. We just weren't sure about the players. I think the lack of aggression, very similar to the conversation we had about the wide receiver position. South Carolina didn't go after many wide receivers in the winter portal. I think at first that kind of jumped out like, hey, we thought we probably would want to get a wide receiver. Well, it sounded like Shane Beamer had that quiet confidence that he liked what we had. And I think what you learned during spring is, yeah, we got a lot of guys that we think can play. So the lack of aggression at the linebacker position, I think, could almost be taken as a positive. Hey, we feel pretty good about where our off-ball linebackers are heading into 2025. Now, excuse me, the last name that South Carolina is looking to pursue is on the offensive line. I personally don't see it as a massive need. Like, that's just my personal take. I think you have your starting five, which you know it's going to look like. I think you have the quality depth. Maybe you want to add one more name, especially at the center position. Nolan Hay from Incarnate Word started his career at Houston Christian. Guy that's played center, guy that's played right tackle, guy that's played left guard. Played a lot of football, over 2,000 snaps during his college football career. Now jumping up from FCS to the SEC level is a big jump, but a guy that can provide depth on the South Carolina offensive line from a multitude of different spots. He's going to be on campus on Tuesday, and look, South Carolina went out and got a guy by name Boaz Stanley, who I don't think a ton of people thought, hey, he's going to plug and play immediately and start. It sounds like he won that center job pretty clean in spring. So we've seen South Carolina have some success going down and getting some lower level competition and having success with those transfer portal ads. Maybe that's a guy like Nolan Hay as well. I think we got our boxes checked. I mean, you look at South Carolina and said, all right, they wanted to add one body on the defensive line, at least one body in the edge position. They added two. All right. Well, pretty successful. I mean, I feel like, again, South Carolina, you were never going to build your roster in the spring transfer portal window, but could you make those few additions that fill in the cracks? I feel like South Carolina did that. Good job by Shane Beamer, in my opinion. Troy Pikes, a kid that I really like. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.